Hello everyone, this is Wrestling Watcher YouTube channel. It's about watching professional wrestling. So, obviously with John Cena retiring last year in December, before then, certainly after then, but before then, a lot of people, a lot of fans have called him the GOAT. Now, the GOAT meaning G-O-A-T, greatest of all time. That's what it stands for. And this was something started by a long time ago, a while back. I think Vince McMahon started this, having it referenced, I think, in 2018 or 2019 as John Cena being the GOAT, the greatest of all time. Now, I'm going to play a lawyer, and I'm going to defend this point. One, his physique. Obviously, it's a great physique. It's one of the classic WWE physiques of all time. It's up there, right? So you have to automatically put that on the list. Number two, let's look at the length of time he was over, right? So he starts in June of 2002, struggles, flounders there for a while. Eventually, later that year, in fall of that year, I believe it was Halloween, he finds the rapper gimmick. Everyone knows the story. He was rapping in the back of a bus. Stephanie heard him. They put it on TV. He becomes the rapper guy, right, with the throwback jerseys. He becomes one of the hottest heels on SmackDown from early 2003 through most of 2003 until he eventually turns babyface. I think it was the episode before Survivor Series, right, of 2003. He was the hottest heel, arguably, that year, right? Obviously, you had other top heels there. You had Brock that year. You had Big Show. But I would argue the one that they were really trying to get over with Michael Cole, really trying to hate the most, arguably, was John Cena. I would say he was the number 2 heel consistently on SmackDown that year behind Lesnar. And so from that point on, he's over as a TV star. He's over as a top heel. He's a big name. And if you think about it, from 2003 onward, obviously till now, he remained a main event top guy within that company. And if you think about it, he was the tippy top guy for over a decade. Could have remained that way. Honestly, he was the most popular guy in 2016, I would argue. Yes, they were pushing Roman Reigns, but Cena was the most over guy in the company. And so, longevity. You got to put him, that's a second point. A third point. Look, I understand a lot of people would say that, Steve Austin was more popular, obviously. That run of his, that 96, 97, that really from 97 onward. Well, honestly, from the 96 King of the Ring onward. When he caught fire, it was unbelievable. Changed the business, saved the company. So I understand people putting Steve Austin at the top and saying he's the GOAT. My counter argument would be like this. I'll use baseball as the metaphor. I would say for about 3.5 to 4 years, Steve Austin gave you 60 to 65 home runs. And it was incredible. I would argue that John Cena easily gave you 15 years of 40 to 50 home runs. Austin's maybe flashier, but you got to give Cena the consistency, the longevity, which makes an argument for why he would be above Austin. That would be point number 3. And there's a lot of details in there. There's a lot of things that you can certainly argue in either's favor, right? Different eras, that's a different thing too. Different supporting cast, all that stuff. Different, place and time. You can easily make an argument that you look at a 2011 or 2012. If you miss Raw, you can easily watch YouTube highlights the next day because they were coming out then, as I remember. But, that Monday Night War with Austin, McMahon, that 97, 98, 99, you didn't have YouTube back then. If you missed it, you missed it. The Attitude Era is nearly going on 30 years old right now. It's just about there. It doesn't feel that old, though, because I could turn on YouTube and watch an Austin McMahon clip from '98 anytime I want, so it still feels fresh in your mind because that convenience is there. That's another point. And look, I would argue that Cena as a worker has had some great matches. Even earlier matches. Like, you're never going to think John Cena in the same, working style as an AJ Styles, Eddie Guerrero, Shawn Michaels. But when you look at John Cena, his in-ring psychology was top-notch. It always made sense. His matches had psychology to them, and I always found them to be exciting. And they made sense. When he started doing a drop kick, it didn't look like a pretty drop kick, but the dude squats over 600 pounds. So it makes sense that if he does a drop kick and he connects, he can do some damage. So we're on to the next point. I think we're on point number 4 now. Advertising for the company. No one in the history of that company has ever been better for marketing and advertising for that company. I'm talking about the late night shows, the commercials, the TV appearances, the promotion of the company. The thing about John Cena, even when he started going part-time from 2016, 2017 year onward, almost every appearance he's marketing, promoting the company in some way. He's mentioning WWE in some way, right? So you got to kind of give him, I think you got to give him his flowers in terms of, I don't know if mainstreaming the company is the right word, but really marrying the company to the mainstream in a lot of ways. I mean, if you think about it, when Hulk Hogan and Roddy Piper was doing the movie thing, it was sort of this outlier, odd thing, right? And then The Rock started doing the movie thing, and he had to stop talking about WWE. He almost had to ignore his wrestling past to really break through. When we look at Cena, when he's mentioning it in every interview, it helps mainstream popularize the sport in a different way. You got to give him credit for really solidifying that bridge. So that would be another point in that argument. And look, this one kind of goes back to the argument of, I guess this would be a 5th point, but this would go back, I think it was the 2nd point where I mentioned longevity of being over. He was a top draw. For years and years and years, he was a top draw. Now, I know someone could say, well, the ratings started slowly dipping down with Cena at top. I can make a lot of different arguments for why that is. That doesn't involve Cena, right? I could argue that's just the way the wrestling business is, ups and downs. I can make the argument that, with streaming, with YouTube and stuff, you don't necessarily need to watch the show to be able to watch a segment. You could argue booking. I mean, there were title changes so much during the Attitude Era on a random episode of Raw or SmackDown that it kind of became this hot potatoes thing, right? I think even in 2000, even all the way up to 2002, I think 2002 had like 6 or 7 WWE title changes that year, right? That kind of, I won't say that's not entirely the case during Cena's era, but it slowed down a little bit. It was still being a hot potato, but not quite as hot potatoed. The booking sort of got sterilized, I would argue, during the Cena era, where it was highly predictable. And that didn't change until the Bloodline, in my opinion. But I understand why people call Cena the GOAT. And that would be the case I just outlaid for you. So that will be all for this one. Thank you guys for listening.